We had a great last episode. This will be the second episode for ISOM. Appreciate everybody tuning in once again. We got a question that I think is important to answer on the public platform here. We've answered a few other questions privately back to those individuals, and appreciate all the comments too. That was really good to see out the gate. The question came from a gentleman named Al. Al, I'm going to answer your question. You've given us a comment and a question here, so we're going to do our best to answer that in a simplest way we can. So Al asks, how can I be more informed? At this time, I follow plenty of different platforms and have apps that give me news and information and feeds all the time. My question is, how do I get more informed but trust the information that I'm getting? And it's a great question, and it really is. It's one of the questions I asked probably in 2008 when I first became a little bit more awake, I guess, to what was actually happening in the world around me and some of the things that maybe I needed to pay more attention to. So we're going to get into that and a little bit about who I am, where I've come from, experiences that I guess I've had to some degree, and what's brought me to where I am today. So appreciate you sticking around and checking out the next episode. Stick with us. It's going to be a good one.
You are now tuned in an informed state of mind. The main takeaway is that this is not going to happen tonight. 2009, I made the decision to get out. My family, we got out.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to ISOM, second episode, season 1. First episode was pretty good. We enjoyed that and got a lot of feedback, like I said, so that's pretty decent for sure. While I'm at it, David, you know who you are. I'll reference the links question, yes, to answer that. I didn't answer your question directly. I'm going to actually give you a really detailed response because you did ask a few other questions, but we do have links where I live in northern Canada for sure. There's absolutely links. Matter of fact, a fun story, my dog had actually chased one out of the driveway. We went out and said, what is that? And that was a lynx sitting in the middle of the driveway, just sitting there like a cat would in the middle of the driveway. And the dog took after it. Treat it not too far off the driveway. We've got a lot of wilderness around us, and treat that lynx, and we were able to get some really cool photos of it, and we were able to bring the dog inside and let the lynx get back down. And I don't think it took long because within 15 minutes we said, you know what, hey, we could kind of see where it was in the tree. It wasn't there, so we let the dog back out. The dog was boom right on it and tracked it all the way across to the next access road into our area. And so we had to go and actually get the dog. Like I say, he was right on it. But that's the answer to that question. Going back to certainly the other question that Al had, we want to explain that a little bit more and talking about what's it like to be informed, right? Look, we all think that we're informed to some degree and we're satisfied. And all I can say is it's really an individual decision when you feel that you've gotten enough information. The only thing I'm saying is that be careful with that. Prior to 2008, I certainly was law enforcement, and full disclosure, I was actually an intelligence officer as well, or an intelligence analyst for the Canadian government. It was a short stint there of approximately a year and a half, and due to some training outside in another division, I end up leaving that, which got me back into law enforcement in general and everyday policing, which was good. It was a good transition, and I have no regrets with that. But really, it took until after the financial crisis, 2007, 2008 financial crisis, that primarily, took place in the United States, that it affected everybody. And of course, being in Canada, I always say we're on the coattails of the United States by probably about 3 months anyways. It happened that way after 9/11. You guys had an anti-terrorist bill that went through, and we had a anti-terrorist bill that went through, to put it plainly. And like I said, that was about 3 months later. It didn't take us long, if not 6 months. So and again, anything that happens financially with our nearest neighbor, our closest trading partner, that we do have, agreements in, certainly extending that into Mexico, of course. The free trade agreement, of course, switched over under Trump administration, which, and again, I can understand why the U.S. did that. It was smart, I think, for Trump to do that. And, we got what deals we could get out of it. And I think we made it okay as well. Trade is trade. But talking about certainly the being informed, I always thought I was informed too. I read the newspaper, usually one or two a day, because I had access to them, law enforcement, and even back, an intelligence analyst. Back then, we didn't have, the computers and such to the degree that they are now, and the internet access and so on. So a lot of that was actually reviewing newspapers, believe it or not, looking for information out of that, and it was part of one of the jobs that I did. So low end for sure, but I relied on that. I was still compartmentalized to some degree that, hey, this is where you get information. And again, in all fairness, we didn't have not nearly the platforms. So when we got back to 2008, of course, digital platforms were taking off. There was more places to get more information. And I would even say that we weren't exposed to as much, whatever you want to classify it as disinformation or misinformation or misguided information or part information. It wasn't as prominent of a problem. Now, wow, I mean, there is dozens and dozens and dozens of different platforms that you can get information on. Private podcasts just like this one, for instance. But it's a duty and responsibility, as far as I'm concerned, to chase that information if it means something to you. So where do you start? Well, it starts with a realization. Hey, I might want to get more information on this particular topic. So if you see and again, you can keep all the apps that you have, follow all the different places that you get your information, media sources. If it's CNN, stick with it. That's fine, right? But consider everything, as we say, but consider other platforms and get the other side of the coin. If you think that, hey, and this is an example I've used before and I'll use it here, right? If you've come to believe that the earth is round, right? That we live on a globe, and you hear somebody say the flat earth, right? And I've said this before, go check out the other side. Why is it that there's so many people that believe that, right? Even if it's just for fun, check that out. Consider it, right? Why is that? And then chase more information. Prove it wrong. So take the information, so I'm going to prove that wrong. And again, it's a matter of how much time you want to put at something. And if you want to prioritize that, well, that's the second thing, is a realization, and then you prioritize. Prioritize exactly what's important to you. You can do that in many, many different ways. You could say I listed, here's the things that I'm taking in right now. I could say, you know what, hey, there's a housing crisis right now. There's interest rates. There's inflation. There's war going on. Active conflicts, rising conflicts. So you take your list and you put that down, and then give it a number between 1 and 10. 10 being, yeah, this is absolute priority. 1 is maybe, or 0, is the lowest aspect. I don't really need to pay attention to this. Mostly entertainment. I'm just curious as to see what's going on the other side of the planet, but I don't think is going to touch me. And give it a number. And that in itself is going to be kind of difficult when you really stop to think about that. How important is this to me? Right? And you can give that even another categorized list. So you're talking about personal family, your personal income, legal, your expenses, whatever the case is. And these are the things that you're going to say, well, this is a guide to why it's important to me, because it has something to do with my family, or has something to do with my livelihood. It has something to do with my finances. This could affect that. And that's going to be pretty high on your list, right? And if we can look out to say, this new information I'm getting today, does this affect me now? Will this affect me in 2 months? Will this affect me in 2 years? Or is this something that's going to affect us maybe in 5 years? And so again, we can prioritize that. How much information? Now we know we've slowed this down because it's 5 years potentially out, right? Looking over that horizon line. So how much information am I going to chase on that? Am I going to wait and see? Right? Because now before I only followed 2 different media sources where I would get information on this particular subject. Now I'm actually going to go ahead and take my time and look at 10 different sources. And talking about different sources, there is actually different, there's different platforms out there. Look at reliability. It's one of those things you're going to check out the reliability of your source. So if you're going to say, if you're going to use Yahoo News, we'll use that. Okay, what's their reliability? Is there anybody in a company that's out there, right, an organization out there that's giving them a grade, to see that. Then there is. There's a place called Ad Fonts, and I'll put that in the show notes so you can grab hold and look at that. It's an interesting site, right? And it kind of prioritizes or puts everything on all the different media outlets that are providing information or news, media in general, and it gives them a bit of a hierarchy, right? Who's the most prominent one to give good journalism or good information, thorough information, more accurate information, and it's less bias, right? That's what we're looking for. Now, there's bias in every single journalist out there. There is. It's inherent. You can't get away from it. But some are very, very focused on making sure that they get it right, and that's important. So talking about the realization, the prioritization, we once we've done that, we now want to assess. We gather the intel, the information to what it is that's important to us at that moment because we've prioritized that. So we sit down and we start to assess. Well, where are we gathering that information, which we've talked about? Is this, and then vet that information, double check on it and say, okay, this seems like pretty good information. Now we have the general information, maybe potential timelines, how it's going to affect me. So now, do I got to make a plan? If this is 2 days out, right? If this is potentially 2 weeks out, and I really think this is something I need to plan for, and again, that's subjective. You need to look at that from your standpoint, right? I'm going to make a plan, right? Now, whatever that plan is, because the fact is that when we looked and we seen that COVID was coming, and they started paying money out for people to stay home in Canada here for sure. Various other places did the same thing. It was a strategy that was used in various places. Some didn't do that, and some offered it, but it was so many hoops to jump through to get it. A lot of them didn't get it. Germany is one of those places that kind of comes to my mind. But we want to create a plan. So we said, well, when this is happening, I said certainly to my partner, I said, I think we had better invest in a house because right now we're in the process of moving, getting back out to, the Atlantic coast of Canada. And I said that, if we're going to take these jobs out here, I think we better hop on a house pretty quickly while the interest rates are so low because I think they're going to go through the roof. I've been looking at my sources, the places that I feel are reliable, and giving me all the information. And I didn't have to go to many places because I trusted that information. And what they were projecting is that, yes, this was going to cost us some money. There's no doubt about that, at the end game. While they were giving away money, it wasn't free. No money is free in that sense. Not even for us when we tap into a credit card. Like we said the last time, we could tap into a credit card. That's about the only way we have the right to print money, so to speak, but it's still a loan, and we have to pay that back with interest, just like our government. So when we seen that, we said we better secure a property. And we were so lucky that when we did that, because that's exactly what took place. Now, if I would have been in this situation in 2007, I think that I would have got caught up. If this exact same scenario that's playing out right now with high interest rates, the inflation in general, war on the brink everywhere, the housing crisis, it's healthcare, the list goes on. We are being bombarded. We'll probably do an entire show on that, to be honest. We just said we need to do something. So again, I'm happy that, my partner here is good at gathering information as well, right? Actually a professional at it, no doubt about it. So we created a plan, we executed the plan, we acted on that plan, and we talked about that as, the realization, right? Prioritize it, the information that you've got so far to say, yeah, I need to figure this out. So let's assess that particular topic. Let's create a plan around that. And we're always going back and forth, reassessing, redeveloping our plan, modifying it, be flexible, okay, especially if you've got the time. And then when you come down to act on it, and it may not be the 2 feet in, it may be a 1 foot in or just a one hand in to say that we're going to get started somewhere to start putting some of our plan into action. Maybe we can't put it in all at once. And in some cases, that's good, for sure. We talk about that all the time. And law enforcement, like I said before, we have a use of force continuum when we're talking about potential to have to use force. Of course, we don't ever want to use force. Officer presence is always the key. The key there, of course, with communication, good communication, right? And we want to be not escalating, but de-escalating the situation. And if we have to disengage some of our plan of attack on that to go back and reassess, buy ourselves some time, we do that, right? As we're acting, and that's an action too. So it's almost shouldn't be a circle, a continuing circle where you're reassessing, planning, and acting, and reassessing and planning and acting as much as it is maybe a figure eight, right, or an infinity, because you're continually doing that. and you're going to continue to do that, whether it's in your profession or certainly whether that's in your real life. You're playing a game of Monopoly. You're doing the same thing, right? So we do it every day. We don't really consider it. But when we go a little bit further with it and we actually cognitively understand exactly what it is that we have a list here. We now know how to organize that. Whether you mind map, and if you're understanding what mind mapping is, we could mind map that out, right? Write it down on a diary, a book, prioritizing each chapter gets a different page. For instance, if it's a smaller issue, get a small binder if you think that that's good. And there's lots of electronic apps to be able to organize all this as well. You can tell that I'm a little older because I'm talking about binders, but that's about it. So, Al, it really comes down to is that you have to cinch that. I can't tell you where to get the information. I can tell you that Ad Fonts, check out down below, right? It's a pretty good little platform that again, it just assesses it and it gives them a bit of a grade and says, hey, these guys are on top. Reuters, I can tell you right now, is kind of one of the guys that are closer to the top, and for good reason. Certainly you've got, oh, gee whiz, AP, good place to get information. Again, it's neutral for the most part. If you've got something that you think is, a good place, or if you got a place that you like to go to and you think is just fantastic, if you think I'm wrong on this, certainly reach out to us. We'll reiterate that. We'll put that out, and even the show notes going forward. If you've got a good place for people to go to, say, hey, this is our go-to. We'll be posting this on YouTube as well, so that's another good place to be able to put your comments live, and other people can see those comments. So you can be putting out information to us here at the show, or you can be putting information out to other people. And again, the more people that get exposed to that, of course, the better off they'll be, right? You might have it all figured out. Let us know for sure. So, Al, hopefully that has answered a bit of the questions for you in that idea of realization, prioritize, that realization, of course, and what you need to prioritize, assess it, make a plan, and then act on that. And again, it's a continuing cycle with that. It always is. So just don't stop at one piece of information from one news source or one platform. Right? Mix it up. Explore outside of it. And when in question, if you're not sure, try to prove it wrong or try to prove it right. Right? There's another strategy. All right. So got a friend who I've been friends with for 8 years or so. Some of you folks are going to be familiar with them. Shammer from Gray Man Concepts. The Gray Man Concepts has been around for, gee whiz, I think 2014. Shammer, if you're listening, you'll be able to correct me on that one. It's been around for quite some time, though. Great platform, and he knows his stuff without a doubt, and he'll be able to speak with this. And actually, I think he has spoke about this to some degree on gathering intel and where good places to get it. Certainly, he's done a whole podcast on that, and he's going to be much more professional on that than myself, and guarantee you that. So check him out over there, the Grey Man Concepts, with Shammer as the host there, and you're going to reach him over on Spotify and all the other platforms. I think he's on about 30 different platforms. Decent size over there. Again, talk a little bit about who I am. Luke, yes, is it. So Cool Hand Luke, that's where my name was basically, I guess, given to me at birth. And as most is, he was my grandfather that actually kind of coined it for myself. It was a time when Cool Hand Luke, everybody remembers the old movie there. And, anyways, it was, I didn't put up a lot of fuss. My name was Luke already, so it worked all right. But he always called me Cool Hand Luke. Hey, where's my Cool Hand Luke? And only because he always said I looked at the world in kind of amazement. I was quiet, baby, didn't fuss much, and I guess he just thought it. He said, I guess, at one point that he looks like he got it all figured out, and I didn't have it all figured out then, and I'm not sure I have it all figured out today, but I think I'm doing okay, better than I was, and I think that's kind of the point. Going back to the very beginning of where I kind of came into the world, I guess, I was born in Thunder Bay, Ontario, Northern Ontario in Canada. And if you're not familiar with the location, there's a lot of wilderness. You might as well say you live in the woods. Not quite. Thunder Bay is a pretty big city. But again, we only lived there until I was about 7 years old. We moved south in Ontario, stayed in the same province, towards the U.S. border, if you would. And we weren't too far away from the U.S. border, maybe a couple hours away from the U.S. border, Detroit area, Michigan. And been across there quite a few times, without a doubt. We got a milking farm down there, dairy farm, and we had about 44 head of cattle that we milked, and that was kind of what we were at. My mom, she had a trucking company, so that got us across the border quite a bit, and I would go with her when I was young. And then when I got old enough to drive and old enough to be insured in the company, I took a more active role. It was a part-time role because I certainly wanted to go a different direction, which was a little bit of a disappointment to my mother at the very least, and my father. At that point, we'd actually had folded the farm, mostly because my dad had gotten. Well, he got injured on the farm, and it basically said this wasn't going to work out. And so, again, a bit of a disappointment there. I think they were hoping that I would be taking that role. Proud of me, nevertheless, for the decisions that I did make and where I went to and where I am today, no doubt. But like I say, it was interesting making that transition from being in the northern wilderness, where we were surrounded by all kinds of nature, no doubt. We ran a hunting guide camp for, I'm going to say, exclusively nearly 20 years for my dad anyways. My grandfather had it in the family for probably 29 years, I think is what it was, definitively 29 years before we took over. And there was another 20 years on top of that. And then we finally, we gave it up and transferred the land lease over to some good friends of ours, probably when I was about 18. And that worked out fairly well, exclusively. He kind of took care of the property because he stayed up in Thunder Bay and he lived up that way, south of that anyways. But it was a good time. I learned a lot when I was out there. I had a fascination with the wilderness since I was 10 years old, exclusively to the point where I started chasing information. That realization came to me, and I said, I need to prioritize this and figure out exactly what's there, and started learning just how to survive in the wilderness. And it was a big, big thing for me. By the time I turned 19, I was already instructing it, in small groups and what have you, that it made through different groups that I was associated with and what have you. After that move back, though, from when I turned 7, we got the farm down south. A lot of different reasons why we did that. We were, the farm was already in the family, so that's one thing I could probably say. And so it was already established, and so that's why it was an easy thing to walk into. But we took the farm over from other family members who were aging, and it was a good transition. So it was an opportunity there, an opportunity for me for sure. I learned new skill sets, a new way of life, which was enlightening to begin with, right? So from there, I got, by the time I got to 10, like I say, I started learning about the outdoors. From there, I got into the local 4-H club, which, if you're not familiar with that, you know what, I could tell you about it, but go out and search it and check it out, right? The local 4-H, and you'll find lots of information about that. Maybe useless information to you at that point, but maybe it's something actually that you can get involved with. Maybe your kids, certainly their kids is who you want to get involved with that. It might be even something that you can volunteer with, right, in your local community or whatever the case is. Primarily it was for farm kids. I say that, but it could be different in different parts of North America, and I do know it's North America wide for sure. It could be even bigger than that, and I'm not really sure, but I learned a lot there too. The 4-H, I guess, to give it a bit of a description, it'd be something about going to something like taking your favorite cow and going to the town or the county fair and getting a ribbon for it, to put it in perspective, right? Well, that's probably a loose descriptive, but nevertheless, it gives you an idea, right? A lot of disciplines, a lot of responsibility learned in that, commitment, which was good, and again, being able to assess things, plan, and create action, which is fantastic. And so that, again, I can't. I'll always go back to those three because it's a big deal. After that, worked on the farm, so I learned a lot there. And by the time I got to 15 years old, I thought, you know what, I got this figured out. I planned out in our local woods that we had, wilderness there. Went out on overnighters, and I thought, I got this figured out. I think I could do a week. I think I could do more. And I did a couple weekends with 4 days. I think it was the longest that I had ever done down home. But I'd read so much, a lot of great authors in that genre and discipline, and which was really good. By the time I got to 15, I'd made the decision. I was well into my 15th year. Matter of fact, I ended up turning 16 out in the middle of the woods, which was cool. A crap flour pancake kind of birthday cake for myself with some loose blueberries, but we'll talk about that. approached my grandfather and my father and said, "This is my plan. I'd like to do it. What do you think?" And they said, "You know what? We've been watching you. You've asked a lot of questions. You've done fantastic. We think you could do it, but your mom probably is not going to be okay with what you're proposing." And I said, I want to go out and up to the hunting camp up north and go to the very back of the property and march my way back over there and stay. I wanted to stay the entire summer. I wanted to see if I could handle everything that came with it. They said it would be probably, danger. There's dangers there, without a doubt. Being all by yourself, if you fall and break your leg, or you get into it with an animal. There is bears, no doubt about that. Moose. Great story actually on that. Maybe we'll get into talking a bit about that. We published that story, as a matter of fact. Talked to somebody about that, and they said, that's a great story. Is there any particular way you could write about that, and we'll get it published? And so they said, yeah. So they published it online, which was great, and that was just a neat thing, and to be able to retell that story and just give a lot of examples of what I was carrying out there. And it was there 3 months and 11 days is what we end up finally calling it quits and coming home. Not that I wanted to, but that I was kind of forced by my parents to say, it's time to get home. You got to get back to school, and we need help back on the farm. Right. And it was very fortunate to be able to take that time off, especially when it was important, for the family we were busy family, no doubt about it. And we were always doing for ourselves and our close neighbors. It was a small little community, even though there was miles between us, between farms. It was still a tight-knit community to some degree, whether or not you ran into people at church or whether or not you ran into people at the local farmers market. And that's where a lot of it. And then, of course, when you ran into problems from time to time, you go down the road to, Jeff and Mary's place and get some advice, or you'd maybe get a part because it was a Sunday and you couldn't get the part in town, and it was a quick fix job you're looking for the plow, or a tractor or something of that nature, or something to do with silage. We used to use one of the neighbors' piece of equipment to produce silage for our silos, so for cattle feed. But that kind of led me into getting finished off with that, and got out of high school, and I decided to leave the nest pretty quickly. I didn't stick around too long. I wanted to get out, get working, make my own money, save up the rest of the money I needed to go to college. And we stayed in school there for a few years once high school was done, and got out in the world and worked a little bit, like I say, and then went off to college, and that worked out pretty well, and got hired pretty quickly in law enforcement. In the interim, while I was in college, what have you, I did a few jobs as far as private investigations, which was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that and learned a lot. I was working for a former big city police officer who had retired a little bit earlier. I got a paralegal company and a private investigation company going, and was fortunate enough to get licensed and work for them, which was great. There was some testing that had to be done, and he had some qualifiers, and he was impressed, and so he hired me. I was the youngest person that ever worked for him, which was really good. Back when I'll go backwards just a little bit, when I got into factory work, as soon as I got out of high school, I went to a factory full time. Like I said, right away, I volunteered to go off and get trained as a health and safety rep for the factory. I was the youngest that had ever been put through there. They said, "You're the youngest person that's ever come through here at 18 years old." So I felt a little intimidated by that, but I learned how to be a health and safety representative, which ensured that other people were safe. And again, I went out and chased information. I wanted to be informed. And it was something that my dad had told me, I think, my mom, don't just take the first piece of information that comes to you. Go chase it, just to make sure that's right. Don't just believe everything you read. And that's probably where I first heard that. Don't believe everything you read, because we had a lot of newspapers. And I'd say something in the local newspaper and say, "Hey, Dad, did you hear about this in the newspaper?" And he said, "Yeah, don't believe everything you read." So it started back then. And I think we've all been exposed to that to some degree, right? And I certainly would carry that forward. After working in a factory, I certainly got out and did some other work part-time. I then applied for policing, which worked out really well. Got accepted. Went through some more training, obviously. Once we cleared the training, we were selected. There was a few of us that were actually given an opportunity and selected to go on and work for the government, which worked out well. And again, like I said, got into intelligence analyst position there. And when we went overseas, actually, too, there was a special unit there that we got to go overseas. We did some bodyguard work, which was great. A lot of fun times there. I'm being a little bit vague on what exactly we were at. There's reasons for that. So, like I say, if if you got questions with that, maybe you can shoot it and I'll see if I can give you an answer. We'll put it that way. But we did that. We got back out of there working for the government. We went to provincial governments and we got back into policing there. That worked out quite well. I enjoyed it. I really did. It was a big emphasis. And I think, again, I have to contribute a lot to my dad. My dad he always kept me grounded. There was no ego. There was no place for ego in the world. He says, it's just, we're always going to have it. Pride is a different thing, but ego is something different. And so it always kept me well grounded. I understood the idea when they talked about community policing. We've talked about community policing, and it's kind of turned into law enforcement. And it's a term that works because that's what we do. We enforce laws. But that's not all we do, and that's not all we originally were to do, and I don't think that's what we should be doing. That transition from law enforcement to community peace officers or community police officers, I think, really needs to be revived and brought back and put to the forefront. And this is what we should be labeled as. We're always going to have traffic officers because that's community safety, it's highway safety. And the idea is to try to limit the problems that we have on our highways. And I firmly believe that. There's an approach that needs to be taken place to all policing, which I think is incredibly important. And I've taken pride in being able to do that for many, many, many years. And my first 8 years in regular, beat policing was exciting. It really was. But it was also depressing to some degree. It was tiring. It was, I can understand where the term thankless came from. It was thankless a lot of the times. Some of the stuff that you end up seeing and exposing yourself to, it's the dirtiest, the evil, I guess, that does exist in the world. It does exist. There's no doubt. But as I said in the last podcast, of course, there's good people in the world, and there is. I would strongly suggest that there's 90% of the population are good people that want good things. Some people don't manage their stress well. Some people don't manage conflict well, and that can be maybe misconstrued that they're a bad person. When we say, well, there's a lot of people out there stealing, sure, there might be a reason for that. Truly enough, there might be a reason. It's not a good reason to steal, but in their mind and how they comprehend things, how they actually assess, plan, and act on a particular situation, which is highly influenced under stress, not knowing what to do, maybe not being properly informed. I just don't have enough of education to understand. I know right from wrong, but I don't know where to get started. And sometimes I do, but ego gets in the way. Maybe pride gets in the way, right? And so they wanted to do this. And there's the emulation, certainly. Wanting to be a bad boy, per se, right? Or a bad girl. But that's it. So it's, it was different for me in that time. A lot of I think the most growing took place in my first 8 years. And I say 8 years because, well, a few things happened within the first 8 years. And after I was in 8 years, there was a couple of transitions from there. We transitioned to federal policing for almost 5 years. And got in with canine work, which was really rewarding. I learned a ton there. I got into the 10-year mark of policing. I got into being certified as a use of force instructor for our local detachment, if you would, and got an opportunity to work in some extremely high-paced environments. It's just very fast-paced, and it was really good. But you had to have good situational awareness, right, to be an exceptional officer in that position and be able to mitigate those problems with, again, the idea was zero force, right? Good presence, good communication, and guiding people, right? And that was what we wanted to strive for, and we did a pretty good job. We really did. There's some people that are going to self-select, and that's it. But you got to get it right, right? It needs to start right for it to end right, and it needs to be morally right, right? It needs to be legally right, and that's important. So it's something I emphasize, which of course led me into a leadership role, and so I led a platoon and a downtown core unit, which was really good. And again, on a federal end of it too, we led a small team that was our jurisdiction was massive. It really was big, and we had a lot of responsibility within that unit. So we did that until I guess my 15th year. By the time I was in 15 years, we got back to something a little more simple. and again was with the province, and we were a core unit again. And like I said, it was a bit of a different spin on it this time, which was good. We were still within a municipality at this point, but we were a provincial unit, and that worked out fairly well. And again, special units are always fun because they come with, well, some special privilege, no doubt about it, and some freedoms, I guess, is kind of what I want to say in that sense. Maybe you don't have to check in as say the rank and file kind of has to do on a regular beat officer position, if you would. It's kind of like getting to traffic or in a specialty unit. You get a lot more freedom to kind of go out there and do what you need to do. It's a lot of responsibility too, right? It's a mighty sword you wield, as we say. So outside of that, we took a break after that. I got into the 19-year mark and I said, I need a break. And I said, that's it. We're stepping away. And so we did. We stepped away, and from law enforcement, period. I stepped away, took the family. The kids were pretty young at that point. I think the oldest was in the area of, 7 years old, I think, and the youngest was 3 years old. So 3 children, and just wanted to spend time with them. I honestly missed, I think, the first 8 years really with my oldest, and again, subsequently the rest of the years with the kids. And I did. I missed a lot of years. Definitely 5 good years I missed because I was working all the time. Owned our own business as well. It was a consulting firm that we owned, and doing close protection details as well, escorting services, which was good. Not that kind of escorting, but it was exciting. We were learning a lot, and we were making some decent money too, which was good. 2008 came along, 2007, 2008 came along, and like I said, everything got a little bit more difficult. By the time 2010 came, we folded the business because nobody, was in good shape. We were still trying to recover from the 2007, 2008 crisis that was taking place, and things were finally had caught up to Canada and around the world really, and it slowed things down. The federal policing program had ended, and so like I said, that was the contributing factor to saying by the time 2011 came, I said that's it. We're taking a quick break and getting out while we can at this point, I think. So like I say, it was. We moved right out of Ontario, completely to a different province. We moved near the ocean, which was interesting, a culture shock nonetheless. Outside of, basically we lived in a fishing village. That's, where we did a bit of a challenge, an adventure. Why not? Didn't really expect to stay as long as we did. But we were enjoying it, the change of pace in life, being able to step outside of what is going to happen or reasonably can expect for the next year, which is a good tactic. Don't get me wrong. But outside of that, we wanted an adventure, while the kids were young, and why not, and we had time, we had money put away. We got some, we had equity from the house, and certainly the sale of basically the entire estate, if you would, and everything except the vehicle that we kind of packed up and said, we're just going to start fresh, sell it all, literally sell it all, keep what's important to us, take the package of the children there and just go. And we did that. So like I said, 2009, we got out, and we didn't really look back. We wanted to make some changes, and we got there, and it was pretty difficult for the first year on a lot of different ways, but it was easy on others. So this is where I ended up becoming a volunteer firefighter as well. So I got exposed to that, which was good. And then as that happened, after the first year we were there, we realized where we were located, there was no paramedics. There was 2 for the entire area that we were in. And I thought, that is just insane. And I didn't find that out until I stopped at an MVC that took place, or a motor vehicle collision. And it triaged everybody at the scene, tried to get contact. Dead zones were terrible for cellular service. Got a passerby to go into the next area where they picked up cell service, and got emergency services on the way. It took probably about 27 minutes, I think is what it was, if I recall, to get the first fire truck on scene. And then ambulance, I think, took 42 minutes outside of that. So like I said, when the triage, what have you, everybody just kept saying, wow, are you a medic? Because this is incredible. You've got everybody bandaged up and what have you, which I carried a trauma kit in the vehicle. And I'd done that for years because I'd come across so many MVCs. You got the confidence in the skill set, a partial skill set, to go in and try to, help and limit the effects of the crash the best you can. Maybe get some people out, get people, in one case, get a person breathing again, which is good. Stop some bleeds in another situation. So I said it's good if to be useful, right? So, and again, I applied myself. Right? When I got more information, are you informed? Well, I don't know. Can you bring somebody back to life? Can you do adequate CPR? Do you know how to do CPR? There's a good step. Right? Ask yourself, be honest with yourself. If you don't, is that a good position to put yourself in? Do you want to wait for that 7, 8, 12, 27, 47 minutes before an ambulance can reach you? I think you've got a responsibility to, to get that information in your head, that skill set. That's a tool in your toolbox. That's important, especially that one. Right? You could save your kid from choking. You can, with confidence, and you want to be confident with that because there's already so much against you. Starting a beating heart, for instance, return to circulation in the body is not always guaranteed. There could be underlying health conditions and what have you. You want to make sure that if there was minimal underlying conditions and that there was little time between the last person's, known vitals to, the time you can potentially bring them back, you want to know that, hey, everything you're doing here is going to be exceptional compressions, especially compressions. Used to be breaths as well. Now I think we've kind of stepped away from that. Of course, with everything going on, health concerns and such like that, sometimes good compressions are enough, right? And that's important. So like I said, something to consider there for sure. So I went back to school, learned how to be a paramedic. That was interesting. So you didn't see that coming. I didn't either. So I took a step away and I went back to school, learned how to become a paramedic, got certified, licensed, in the province that we were in, and became part of the team in that local area. And it was welcomed without a doubt. And I excelled at that, and I felt like I was really good at it. Here was the downside, though. Downside is that I've got a big, big heart, and it killed me. It really did. It hurt me. Full transparency. There was a lot of times that I go home and I'd just cry myself to sleep, and I really would. And it was tough. I'm okay talking about it now, and maybe it helps to some degree. I've seen a lot, and there was a whole reason I stepped away from law enforcement because I said I need time. I need to step away. And I recognized it. I could feel it. I didn't need to go see anybody. Nobody needed to tell me, hey, this would be a good idea, Luke, if you stepped away for right now, right? But I could see the signs. And again, that was only because I chased information, figure out, hey, what are other signs? Maybe PTSD, or me basically saying, I'm not going to be as efficient. I need to have my head in the game. I'm no good to the people I'm going to go to serve, or serving in general, or certainly the team that I work with, right? And I needed not to be in a position where I could potentially drop the ball or make a bad choice. So I recognized that and took myself out, which was easy. So I took a leave. But again, like I said before in the last podcast, probably wasn't a good idea. But it was a skill set I brought away, and that was fantastic. After a couple of years, we left that, and we came to the idea that we're going to go back. We were kind of missing home too. There was a lot of family we left back in Ontario. We went back and got back into law enforcement, and was working for the province at that time, which was good. That took my patrol areas huge, which was nice. I found that I was almost getting back into the idea of being away from home more than I was home, and that work-life balance was beginning to suffer again a little bit. And I come to find out that it was because of the lifestyle we were leading. And I said, what are we doing? We've got too much overhead. We need to simplify this. If we want to really enjoy that. So I need to make a decision on that. So my partner and I decided, we had kids still in tow, right? So I can tell you though, the kids were not terribly happy about that. We could probably do a podcast. I'm sure my daughter would probably sit down with us and actually talk about the transitions that we were making and what she thought about it, right? And it was difficult for them, and I have some thoughts on that. So, well, I always say it's easy to go out and get out of where you are. If you don't like where you are, get out, move your feet, go, right? And if you say, oh, I can't because of this, that, then see if you can make changes. If you really want to change, then what are you going to do? You're going to come to the realization. You're going to prioritize things, assess it, make a plan, and then put it into action, piece by piece. It really, by the time we understood what we needed to do to get to where we are today, that I actually found time to actually do a podcast, for instance, while still busy, and still having a good quality of life. Right. Tonight, I'll be actually out pushing some more snow with our snowblower and such, because we got hammered with some snow tonight. So I'm going to have certainly a good balance in being able to go out and take care of what needs to be taken care of in the property. Later on tonight, when everybody's home, we'll have a good conversation, maybe a little snack, and that'll work out quite well. But it took us really 3 years. We had a 5-year plan, and we're coming into the 4th year now of the plan, and we're in the 4th year almost, I guess, of the plan. And we think we're on track. We didn't expect interest rates to go as high as they did, but we had planned that they were going to raise, that's for sure. We planned for quite a few different things, we think. We limited our risk. We took evasive action when we seen it on the horizon line, but again, that came with being informed. So it's important in that sense. But that's a little bit about who we are. My partner, she's in emergency services. I'm in emergency services, which is good. And I've also got a part-time job that I'm working as well, which is it keeps me kind of in the same genre of work, which is good. And it's just because she's gone a lot, right? Because sometimes we're on opposing shifts. So like I said, it's just a good way of filling in, and I can kind of pick and choose what the shifts I want, which is good. And the only kid that's left home now, they're doing a lot of schoolwork. They're old enough now where they've got friends, they've got freedom, and they don't really need much from dad per se in that sense, and mom. So they're out doing their own thing, which is good. And but like I said, that's kind of where we're at. I wanted to answer those couple questions. Hopefully we've answered them well enough. And a little bit about myself, where I've been, some of the things I've seen. We'll touch base on those throughout the podcast without a doubt. So, but now, like I said, I hope that's answered everything for everybody. If we're going to get into the next podcast here, there's a couple of things I want to touch base on, and I hope you check it out. It's going to really it's going to ask you a couple questions. And so I look forward to that next podcast. Go ahead and check this one off as something to share. And make sure you're subscribed. We appreciate that. And again, check the show notes. There's a few things in there I'm going to put there for everybody. And we hope it finds you well. So till next time, folks, take care. Consider everything. Bye for now.
This has been a Rush Creek production.